Hello and welcome back to another Craig and Dave Unscripted. So this week we said we were going to spend a bit of time talking about one of our resources we've had for quite a while, but it's gone through a complete overhaul, more than just a facelift. So we thought we'd spend some time talking about it. Should say straight off the bat, it's fully available now. It has been for several weeks. And if you're a premium member, you just log on to your premium resources and you'll find it under any of the GCSE courses under the programming section. So it's Telium, and we're calling it Telium version 2.0 because we said we've actually had this resource around for our premium subscribers for years, but we're going to spend some time talking about all the changes and updates and improvements we've made. But I'll hand over to Dave firstly before we go over the new stuff. So we've had this for ages, and this was your original idea, Telium. So I've got there text-based space theme extended programming workshop. What was the idea behind this piece of work originally? What was it bringing to the teachers beyond the programming resources we had at the time?
Yeah, well, I remember when I was in primary school that my very first experience of programming was creating a little text-based adventure game. And that's what kind of got me into computer science, really. Playing games, playing little, 80s games, and text adventure games were very much a big thing in the 1980s. And so for me, it was part of sort of nostalgia, if I'm completely honest with you. But I also wanted to create something that pulled together all the concepts that you learn at GCSE: inputs, outputs, variables, selections, iterations, files, and put all that into something that is substantial. Now, the exam board do produce sort of sample projects. They used to be used for the non-examined assessment, the NEA, some extended little projects, but I often found that they weren't very fun. And I wanted to create a sort of a game, but I didn't want it to be sort of graphical, because I wanted them just to use the skills that they learned in Python up to that point at GCSE. So it kind of felt like, well, I can marry the nostalgia with the text-based adventure game in order to produce a project that the students maybe would enjoy. But the primary goal was to pull all the concepts together that they've learned, maybe at the end of year 10, into something a little bit more substantial. So that's the point of it. As you're flicking through windows, I have no idea what you're up to.
No, that's brilliant, and that was exactly it. So what we're going to do then, we're going to take a sort of a hybrid approach here. We'll go through everything that's in Telium for those of you that have never heard of it before, come across it, and also highlight all the things which are new and improved and changed. So as Dave just mentioned, I mean, first of all, one of the first things you're going to ask is, well, that's great, but how am I going to use it? And Dave's alluded to them there. Yeah, it's the reasons are coming up on the screen here. Consolidate an understanding of all these multiple disparate concepts. Just there's no requirement for an NEA anymore. It's not in the specifications, but you can use this to replicate the challenge of the NEA, or just so you can tick that box, because you still have to be able to say you've provided opportunities for substantial programming, and this would certainly fit that bill. But you can use it in any way you see fit, catch up, extension, clubs, all sorts of stuff. And because it ties together many different programming concepts across the course, you could just do it towards the end of the course as an excellent way of exam revision for looking at algorithms and code data, all those kind of things they need. So you can use that however you wish. And Dave also alluded, one of his original ideas was that it should tie together all the concepts required by the GCSE level. So all those things on the screen are in there. So it's a great way of saying, right, you've learned all of these concepts separately, you've been doing exercises, but let's try something extended, something a bit more meaty, that's got all of these concepts in. And you wrote it with the intention that it wouldn't then go too far, or I don't think indeed at all, beyond the spec, doesn't it? So it's just the concepts they need.
Yeah, the idea being, I know it would be very challenging for students to do this completely from a blank sheet of paper, but the idea being that actually everything you've learned on the GCSE means that you could now create this from scratch yourself. It doesn't include anything that you wouldn't have been taught. It doesn't go beyond the GCSE specification. And in fact, I made some compromises along the way, Craig, because
Yeah.
some of the approaches that I took in this game, I probably wouldn't take those approaches if I was doing it for real. But I
Right.
wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to tick all the boxes for GCSE. And a good example of that is how the layout of the spaceship, which perhaps we'll talk about a little bit later. But that was an opportunity for me to pull something in from the GCSE that I actually wouldn't do it that way if I was programming it for real. So no, it doesn't go beyond the specification, and in fact, it does things in a way that means you are only doing what's in the specification. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes it perfect for the level of study we've aimed it at. One of the new things here, for those of you who've used Telium before, is we've fully integrated our Craig and Dave time approach. This idea of try, investigate, make, and evaluate. If you're using our old Telium resources, we've completely redone that now. Just to show you what I mean, I'm just going to share. Oh, I apologize. I'm just going to share one of the student handouts here. Just switching windows. Okay, here it is. So here, for example, is stage 6. This is a student handout. We're not going to do too much into how many stages there are, but we'll talk about them in a bit in independence. But here's a typical stage, a brief introduction, and then everything is structured with the time approach. And if you're an existing user, you will know this is not how the handout's been provided. So we've got this idea, we'll type this code in first, try this. And we've taken the opportunity, as we're redeveloping version 2, just to add in little nice to haves as well. So you'll see here, hopefully you can see it on the screen, because this is Python, we've got these tab lines in here. Just so it's really easy for the student. Oh, blimey, I'm up to 6 and 7 tabs there. Little things that can throw people. So we've put little niceties in. So they try some code. Then we have the Craig and Dave investigate section, a series of questions, and it follows the approach that we use in our time resources. You know, how
zoom in on that a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
Let's zoom in and have a look at some of those.
Yeah, probably just there you go. So yeah, identify the type of iteration statement being used in the move queen subroutine. So, you know, we've taken this, and full answers, by the way, we'll talk about this later. This is something which is totally new to Time versus 2. There's a complete teacher guide, and we give full comprehensive answers to all these questions as well. So we've got a full set of investigate questions for every single stage. Then we've got the make part of time. Right, you know what? You've given it a go. You've run it. You've fixed any bugs. You've got it working. You've done a bit of investigation. Hopefully, you've got your head around it. Right, now it's time to, it's what we were talking about last week, actually, Dave. Now it's time to expand your mind a bit and just apply those skills a little bit outside of what we've given you. And we've got challenges. And again, similar to how Dave's done time, 1, 2, and 3 point challenges. We've got a range of challenges there. I know a common approach for yours, Dave, isn't it? Is complete at least X number of points of challenges, but do it how you wish.
Yeah, that's the thing that is often most misunderstood, actually, about our time resources, because a lot of teachers think that the students are supposed to do all of the challenges, and there's too much work to do all of the challenges. So my intention here, both with the time resources and with this Telium game, is that if you've got students that struggle a little bit, then they're going to get a working game just by typing up the code in the try stage. So everyone will get a working game, no matter their sort of level of ability. And then if you've got students that can take that a little bit further, but they're quite weak, then just do the 1 point challenges. And then if you've got students that can perhaps take a little bit more of a challenge, then you've got 2 point challenges. And then for those students of higher ability, you can give them the 3 point challenges. So not all students need to do all of the challenges here. And as Craig said, you might say to students, right, I'd like you to do 3 points of challenges, please. So what that means is for your higher ability students, they just do one of these extensions that's worth 3 points. But of course, it requires a lot more than the 1 point challenges. And your weaker students, to try and get to 3 points, they can do one 2-point challenge and one 1-point challenge. So they've got some different work to do. You know, it's differentiated, but it's all within the same objective and stage. And the beauty of this is it doesn't matter which extensions you do or don't do, because it doesn't impact on the rest of the game. All
Yeah,
these are extensions to the game to make the game better, but none of them are required. Obviously, if you do every challenge, you're going to get a game that is, you know, phenomenally better than if you did none of the challenges. But you can decide, I'm just going to do that 2-point challenge and I'm not going to do anything else. And it will improve your game slightly in this objective, but it's not a requirement that you've done any other of the challenges. So those higher ability students that do a 3-point challenge, they do not have to do the 2-point and the 1-point challenges. The game works. All the extensions are
absolutely.
independent of each other. And that is the beauty of this, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we wrap off every stage with the student handouts with the evaluate stage, and not always, but quite often this involves reference to testing. How would you test this? What would be the expected outcome? There are different evaluate topics, and again, where there's particular interesting areas for discussion in the evaluate, we've provided some points for discussion and teacher notes in the teacher guide as well. So this is completely refresh. The student handouts are totally new. So if you're using the resources currently, definitely go ahead and get a new version.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that, you know, your weakest students, because often that's the one of the criticisms that we get sometimes is, oh, your work is very challenging. And we don't make any excuses for that. We want it to be challenging. We believe in
Yeah,
high performance learning. We believe that all students should have an opportunity to do difficult work. And it's the teacher's job to scaffold up rather than to differentiate down, is what we
yeah,
believe in.
very much
But
philosophy. Yeah,
for your really, really weakest students that just can't cope with this programming, just typing up the code, getting the tabs right, predicting what's going to happen, maybe changing a few variables, and then doing the testing is enough of a challenge. And it's still a good computing experience. You know, type up
yeah,
the code, see what happens if you change a few variables, what happens if the tabs are in the wrong place, test the code that you've been given against the test table. Very valid computing experience. And they haven't had to do any of the extensions, and they
yeah.
still get a good working game at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So I fully timeified. I think I might have made that word up. As we said, and we just alluded to by showing you one, there are a complete set of self-guided student handouts. I think the project comes in, yes, 8 stages with a 9th kind of open-ended stage at the end of the project, but 8 main stages, and all of them fully following the time approach that we just showed you. So they're all provided as part of the new version. And as we said, again, something completely new, we've got a full teacher guide. I won't go through showing that now. Plus, it's got answers on there, and I probably don't want to put those on the video. But that's 43 pages long, and as a teacher, it goes through every single stage. Not only does it provide comprehensive answer to every investigate question, where there's maybe a slightly more trickier piece of code, or maybe just a harder piece of code, we have gone to the effort to provide some additional notes and discussion points. You know, so at any time you can feel completely supported in delivering this. In case maybe you come across an area where maybe you just lack some confidence, and we understand that, and part of what we do here is fully supporting teachers as well as the students. So all of that is in there from start to finish. So that's completely new. We didn't have that with the previous one. The other thing, and Dave alluded to this again, we've provided the Python files for every version of the stage. And of course, what this allows you to do is, if a student completely codes themselves into a corner and you haven't got time to fix it, or a student just misses a lesson or turns up a lesson late to your program, you can say, look, there's a clean version of Telium stage 3. It works. There's the end of stage 3. Pick it up from here. So we're giving you effectively giving you maximum flexibility there.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that,
Well,
Dave?
I think that's really important, that it's teaching programming is hard enough. And it's made harder when students are absent
Yeah.
and they're at different stages. And so, as Craig says, what you can do is, let's say you've got a student that's missed the first two stages of this and they join the lessons at stage 3. The rest of the class have done stage 1 and stage 2, and they're doing stage 3. Normally that would put you in a very difficult position in the classroom. But what you can do with this is you can give the code to that student who was absent for Telium stage 2, and now they're at exactly the same place with the working program as everybody else in the class, ready to start stage 3. And so if a student happens to miss a lesson, let's say that they miss stage 4, they've done stage 3, they miss stage 4, they're back in the lessons for stage 5, that's okay. Just give them the code up to stage 4 and say, right, okay, we've given you the code for the lesson that you've missed. Let's take it from there. You're not disadvantaged at all, really, that you were that you've missed a lesson, because actually the code in each of these objectives, it just repeats the same concepts over and over and over again. There's variables, there's iterations, there's selections in stage 2. What's in stage 3? Well, guess what? Variables and iterations and conditions, and all the stages are really just a lot of the same thing again and again and again, because of course that repetition is really important in teaching. The only thing that you would lose in that situation is if you've got a student that did loads of extensions in stage 1 and stage 2, and then they miss stage 3 and join the class again in stage 4, and you give them a copy of the code at stage 3, then obviously it's going to wipe all the extensions that they did in the previous
These are the
stages.
base
There's
versions
not
of each
much we
stage.
can realistically do about that particular scenario, but I would probably advise getting them going with the stage that you want them to do, and then retrofit their extensions back into the new code would work. Or indeed, you could say to them, well, look, okay, you missed the lesson. The rest of the class are going to carry on with the next stage, but you're pretty good at this. You could catch it up. And now they are, just a stage behind, but that's okay. And, you get different students working on different stages at different times. And as long as you're comfortable with that as a teacher, this will allow the students to be completely self-sufficient. There's nothing in here that requires you to lead from the front if you don't want to, but equally you can. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, about leading this from the front, I think an underlying philosophy of Dave and I, right from the very start of the company, is to produce as many resources as possible, which, for as far as possible, can be run independently of the teacher by the student. You can manage and support, but you don't have to spend a lot of time at the front of the class, and we still stick to that. But I think Dave and I have also come around over the years to understanding there are times when you just need to consolidate and do a bit of traditional teaching and lead from the front. And to that end, we now provide you with all the theory PowerPoints at GCSE. In a like-minded way, this is brand new for version 2. If you wish to lead this completely from the front and step the students through it, we've got a completely teacher-led PowerPoint. It introduces the project with a scenario, and then there are clear stage, like chapterized versions, and you can introduce and have class discussions. And we've used this ourselves, so that's probably worth mentioning. We did a deep learning day, for want of a better word, at our school. We had all of year 11 off timetable for the entire day, lessons 1 through 5, and we did this in a day, and we used this PowerPoint to provide some kind of structure throughout the day. So again, they can do it independently, just hand them the handouts, but you can also lead from the front. And if you do, these PowerPoints are excellent for that. And I say they divide up at each stage. So that is completely new again for version 2.
I mean, the project is perfect if you're the type of school that wants to give opportunities to some of your students, perhaps in the Easter holiday, and you want to do a sort of 2-day workshop where selected students come in and they have some donuts and do a bit of coding, then this would make a marvelous 2-day project. I mean, for us, it was a bit rushed in a single day. The students really didn't get enough time to do many of the extensions. But across 2 days or even 3 days in a holiday, this would be perfect enrichment. And again, you could do it after school if you want to do as part of a club, so that you get those students that are keen to do this doing this as well. So as Craig said, you can use this in so many different ways.
Yeah. So I think what I've done there is, oh, that's our outro. I think what I've done there is provided a nice overview of what is in Telium version 2 if you're brand new to it, and indeed what has changed if you're an existing user. I guess what we haven't really done there, which I might hand over to you a bit, Dave, is just to tell people, well, okay, I know it's a space-based adventure game, but what is it? I mean, that's everything you get in it. There's all the resources, everything that's new. But if you're interested in just knowing, well, what is Telium, then go on, Dave.
Yeah. So Telium, as we said, it's a text-based adventure game. Okay. And it's based off the films Alien, the whole Alien franchise, and Life, which was a film in 2017. So it's based on this premise that you've got a spaceship, and it's become infested with a queen alien who's given birth to sort of worker aliens, and they've infested the spaceship. And as a result of doing that, they have tampered within the spaceship in a way that means it's not functional, and you have to kind of sort that situation out by going and killing the queen alien, effectively, is the premise of the game. And you do that by sort of wandering the various rooms of the spaceship and exploring what's inside those rooms, and then interacting with the things that are inside those rooms. And so I'm not going to spoil the whole thing by talking about individual game components.
No, don't do
But
that.
just as a rough premise, that's what it's all about. But we've designed it in a way that, if you don't want a spaceship and you want a space base that happens to be on a planet instead, that's all absolutely fine as well. And if I just bring onto the stream a minute. So this is the sort of the Charles Darwin spaceship that the game is sort of based on. And you can see here that there are sort of 17 different rooms. And it's a great opportunity to talk about abstraction here, actually, where you can infer from the shape that I've drawn from where the rooms are, that number one is probably sort of, the cockpit, the bridge, and then rooms 14, 15, 16, and 17 might be the engine rooms, and then you might have other rooms as well. But the configuration of this doesn't really matter. And so your students can create their own spaceship, their own space base, because the only thing that's important here is how many rooms have you got. You have to have a minimum number for the game to work, but there's no maximum number. And they have to be connected to each other. And again, you want some rooms that only have 2 connections, so the player can win the game. And you want some rooms that have got, multiple connections. And so this is one layout, but the students can design their own layouts as well. And the game code will function irrespective of what the layout of the spaceship is. So it's a great opportunity to talk about abstraction and to allow the students to have creativity to create their own layouts and their own lore. And they can also, as one of the extensions, create descriptions of these rooms. So at the moment, what happens when you go into one of the rooms is it says you're in room 10. In this room you can see, that kind of approach. But there's nothing stopping the students putting some extra sort of print statements in there and some selection statements and saying, if you're in room 10, then print there's a cold draft in here, and and you can add in some extra story elements, and that might appeal to some of your students to be able to do that, and it's not going to impact on the code at all. And indeed, you could put some of that in the text files. So if I just show you how this actually sort of pans out, each of those rooms, or modules as we call them, is just represented in a text file. So every module has a text file, and in that text file you can see some data. So this is module1.txt, and it just has the data 2300. Well, those are the rooms that it is connected to. So room 1 is connected to room 2, it's connected to room 3, and it's not connected to any other rooms. And so if it were going to be connected to another room, you would just replace the 0 with the number of the room that it's going to be connected to. And the code's written to assume that you might have up to 4 connections from a given room, but you could change the code very easily to to change that if you wanted to. So maybe you put the description of the room here inside the text file instead, and read that in as part of the process of reading in the data for the rooms that the module is connected to. That would work very well. Now, as I said at the very beginning of this video, I wouldn't code it this way. I would probably have all the data actually in the program. I wouldn't be reading in text files, because every time the player moves to a new room, it has to read that text file, and it's reading those text files multiple times if the player's going into the same room more than once, and that's very inefficient, and you wouldn't want to do that. But I did it this way because I wanted a good reason for using files. You know, I didn't want to just do what we do with traditional Python exercises, which is to write a couple of bits of data to a file and read them back in again. And it's all pointless. You know, why would you really want to do that? So this was an excuse for using files. And I just thought that would be really, really nice for the students to see how some of these things could have a real purpose. And it gives you all sorts of opportunities as a teacher to talk about the structure of the file and why it's important that there's no space between the word module and the number of the module. And if you did want a space, what would you have to do in the code so it still worked? And it just opens the doors to so many rich classroom conversations that you might have. So this whole Telium game, it can provide you with all sorts of opportunities for teaching, as well as just programming the game and the extensions itself as well. As I say, abstraction that we've used here is a great example.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, again, you know, interesting points for taking students down various discussion paths are again included throughout the teacher notes. Although I'm sure there's loads I haven't thought of. But
and if you have done GCSE, and you know your students at A level have done GCSE, and you're an A level teacher, and you know they've been with you through that GCSE journey, and they're more on a kind of 4-year journey rather than a 2-year journey. You can bring this back up again at A level, and you can say, okay, let's have another look at this. Remember doing this at the end of year 10? Let's have another look at this. What data structure could we use to represent this spaceship? And of course, they've now learned about graphs. And so you can have that whole discussion about storing the data in memory in a graph rather than storing the data in a file. And then you can use this, for example, for traversal algorithms, and you can talk to them about, okay, what if I wanted to find the shortest route between module 2 and module 10? How could I do that? And I can apply Dijkstra's algorithm to it, A-star pathfinding. And you know, you can bring this project back up again at A level and have even deeper and richer discussions.
You're making me think. Sorry, you're making me think there now, Dave, as well. You know, I could turn around to year 13s as we're heading towards exam season and say, right, you guys remember doing this. It was written with a GCSE focus with year 10 GCSE skills in mind. I want to apply everything you now know as year 13 A-level students. Rip this apart. How would you do it better? You know, wow. I wouldn't use 17 text files and access them, you know, from the hard disk every single time I need them. Brilliant. Why not? What would you do? Tell me why. What's that benefit? What are we saving there? Why is that more efficient? Yeah. But you can tell he's unscripted. I like that. There's a classroom activity for us. Right. I mean, I don't want to wrap this up because is there anything else you want to say? Because I've really done everything I wanted to say there about what's new and what is in it. But is there anything else you wanted to go over, particularly with what Telium is, what it can offer?
Yeah, just to recap on what you said right at the very beginning of the video, this is really for teachers. So if you're a student watching this thinking, hey, how do I get access to this? Well, you have to talk to your teachers.
Yeah.
If your teacher is a Craig and Dave member, they might have an old version of this. What we're showing you here is the new version.
Yeah.
So teachers, you know, please download and use the new version if you've still got an active membership with us. And if you are a student that is watching our videos on YouTube and is using our workbooks in class, and you're thinking, we haven't done this yet, when are we going to do this? Well, maybe you can ask your teacher, are we going to do the Telium game?
I've seen a great video on it.
It's it's really for teachers, this particular video. So that's how you get hold of it. You log in to your premium resources, you go to your GCSE course, whether that's OCR J277 or it's OCR 8525 or EdXL 1CP2, go to that course tile, go to the programming, and you can download Telium V2. And the only other thing I would mention that perhaps I didn't say earlier is if you like Prim, if you like the Prim model, then this is Prim. Okay,
Yeah,
it does
100%.
the whole predict, you know, and all that. It just puts a lot more flesh onto the investigate stage for you, so that you don't have to think about what questions to ask. It's all included for you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.